Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. I'm here to talk about all about WrestleMania 38 Night 2. Of course, we did the video, it was over 2 hours long on this channel on WrestleMania Night 1 and how much I loved WrestleMania 38 Night 1. But this is Night 2. Now, Night 2 starts off with a way better tag match than Night 1. The Night 1 started off with a tag match too. It was Rick Boogs and Shinsuke Nakamura versus uh, the Usos for the for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. This one here is for the Raw Tag Team Championships, and it's a three-way, three teams. It's Alpha Academy, Street Profits, and RK Bro. Now, this match was incredible. Street Profits, Angelo Dawkins looked like Martin Luther King. Many people commented that he shaved his beard off. He looked like Martin Luther King. Alpha Academy, Otis and Chad Gable, they looked incredible. Otis, of course, he reminds me a lot of an early version of Vader. I think if he became a more vicious heel, he would be kind of like Vader. But RK Bro, Riddle, and Randy Orton, they were the ones that really blew me away. They were such in sync. They did the one spot, that Randy Orton does, where he does the DDT off the second rope. They did that in sync together, and then Riddle hits this incredible RKO like off the top rope, and RK Bro gets the win, maintaining the Raw Tag Team Championships. Yeah, I give this match, 3 out of 4. But some of the bad takeaways from this event in terms of tag teams. The biggest, most horrible takeaway in terms of tag teams in this event was the New Day match. People were saying, "Oh, the New Day match with Sheamus and Rich Holland was cut. Why was it cut? That's unfair. The New Day got shafted." But this match should have been cut. Biggie wasn't there, but they wore the same colored tights or whatever when Biggie won the WWE Championship. So they paid tribute to him in that way. But this match sucked. Rich Holland, and Sheamus made quick work of the New Day. And I'm just going to say, man, I feel like the New Day's time has passed. Kofi has won the WWE Championship. Big E has won the WWE Championship. Xavier Woods, one of the greatest mouthpieces and managers in the history of the WWE. But their time has really passed. Their time was, 2016, 2015, 2017, 2018, 2019. But now we're in 2022, and I just feel like the act is stale. I don't know if I would turn them heel or break them up somehow, but you got to do something with them. But the absolute highlight of WrestleMania Night 2, I say, and the best match on this show was Sami Zayn versus Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville in an anything goes match. Yeah, coming into this, I didn't think this was going to be any good. I thought this was going to be shit. I'm like, Johnny Knoxville from the Jackass show is way past being relevant. He was relevant like in the 2000s, but now in 2022, there's no way he can still be relevant. This is just a shoe-and-horned attempt to put yet another celebrity. Okay, night 1 had Logan Paul. Night 2 has Johnny Knoxville into a match and stick him with Sami Zayn, the resident conspiracy theorist of the WWE. But I was wrong, man. This match, this is this match was one of the reasons why we love professional wrestling. It was one of those matches that you're watching and you're cracking up, you're enjoying it. It's reminiscent of like a Tupelo concession stand match or something like that. It it had everything. It had a life size mousetrap, a hand that was reportedly Mark Henry and Mae Young's offspring back when Mae Young gave birth to a hand back in the Attitude Era on Raw. You know, it it was just it had Wee Man body slamming body slamming Sami Zayn like Sami Zayn was fucking Andre the Giant and he was Hulk Hogan. Little little Wee Man, one of the party boys, showing up uh, naked, half naked. It was just, it was the most entertaining match on this show. The second most entertaining match on this show, and I got to give it up to this match, was Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory. Now, going in again, I'm like, Pat McAfee loves the product. It's his dream, like in every wrestling fan's dream, to be at WrestleMania, to walk that aisle at WrestleMania and, you know, be there. So I'm like, okay, it's his dream, right? He's living his dream. He did a good job last year, or was it 2 years ago against Adam Cole for that NXT show? He's pretty good. He understands the business. He has a love for the business. And the interview with Vince McMahon, of course, Vince McMahon doesn't do many interviews, so he does the interview on Pat McAfee's show. And there were rumors leading up to it that Pat McAfee there was going to be Pat McAfee versus Vince McMahon. And I'm like, well, that can't be possible. Vince McMahon is 76 years old. Well, I was wrong. Just as on night one, Stone Cold Steve Austin returned, and I didn't think he would, and for an impromptu match with Kevin Owens. On night two, Vince McMahon, after the Austin Theory match, Vince McMahon, who was in Austin Theory's corner, gets into the ring and he wrestles Pat McAfee. So, and he wins. He gets the pin. He wins over Pat McAfee. Then Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out and he stuns Austin Theory and he stuns Vince McMahon. And the stunner on Vince McMahon was one of the worst fucking stunners ever. It takes the cake from WrestleMania 23, the stunner that he gave to Trump. Like, that used to be the worst stunner in history. This stunner against Vince was the absolute worst stunner, but it didn't look great, but it was comical. They made up for Vince's, you know, disadvantages with this. And it's crazy to think that Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin had two of the most memorable matches on this show at WrestleMania 38 years and years after the Attitude Era. That still ticks all the boxes. Vince is a villain uh, and Austin as a babyface, even still to this day. And they've been the first time Vince McMahon got stunned by Austin. I was there. Madison Square Garden was Raw in '97, and still, even to this day, at his advanced age, you can't even hardly sell it. But still, to this day, Vince McMahon gets stunned by Stone Cold Steve Austin. The fans still pop for it. Um, and then Pat McAfee has a beer bash with Austin, and Pat McAfee gets stunned. And then Pat McAfee is actually he's on the canvas drinking the beer as he's supposed to be laid out. The guy just loved it, man. He loves the business. He's so passionate, about professional wrestling. You know, I would love to see him come back for more WrestleManias. You know, sometimes when a non-wrestler gets in there, you're like, damn, he's not really gonna give his all. Like I thought, you know, Like people thought Bad Bunny wasn't gonna last year. I thought Logan Paul wasn't gonna this year, or Johnny Knoxville. But it's showing that when you really have a love for the business and you really care, you'll give your all, and you will go out there and you will steal the show, even in the showcase of the Immortals. It's meant for the wrestlers, but I really think the stars of this year's WrestleMania was the non-wrestlers. But anyway, somebody that was a wrestler that finally got her just due, and I'm so glad for it. It was the Fatal Four Way match. Remember the one where I couldn't remember that Shayna Baszler was Natalia's partner. It was Naomi and Sasha for the Women's Tag Team Championships, challenging Zelina Vega and Carmilla and Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan and Natalia and Shayna Baszler. And I'm like, Sasha always loses at WrestleMania. She has one of the worst WrestleMania records of all time. So I'm fully expecting her to lose. She has the same outfit on she had from last year. I'm fully expecting her and Naomi to lose because remember, Naomi deserves better. Remember that campaign from a couple of years ago? It was Rhea Ripley that pinned her. So that this match kind of harkens back to that. Well, yeah. And the good news is that finally Sasha Banks and Naomi finally got something. Sasha Banks is one half of the new WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Natalia was going for the heart attack. She looks as thick as Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Now she really is starting to look a lot like Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter. In the beginning, Sasha Banks went for a test of strength with Rhea Ripley. Rhea just knocked it the hell out. Rhea and Liv Morgan did really good. One thing with Selena Vega that was annoying in the beginning when they were doing the warm-up interviews on the pre-show, why the hell is Selena Vega, a Puerto Rican girl from Queens, New York, have a fucking British accent? Stop with that British accent. It's really annoying. And you come off as really pretentious. I know the Queen gimmick. Okay, yeah, Booker T did the King gimmick. Sheamus did the King gimmick. Even Owen Hart did it after he won the King of the Ring. But stop. It's really pretentious. It comes off as really inauthentic. And it makes me not like you, Zelina. And I was actually supporting you when you left the WWE over what you conceive as poor business practices. I don't support really unions in professional wrestling because I said that in the previous video why I don't think unions will really work in professional wrestling, but more protection for the boys and girls, the wrestlers. I do support that. But like when Del Rio's protest when he left because of racism, if you're going to come back anyway, just because they're going to give you a better spot, then you don't really care about your protest. So they gave you a better spot. You won the King of the Ring or the Queen of the Ring, and now you're some pretentious asshole using a fake British accent. You need to just stop it. Selena Vega's gimmick is annoying, and I'm glad she lost. And finally, my girl Sasha got something for this year's WrestleMania for putting over Bianca Belair in the spectacular way she did last year. Another match on this show or segment of this show, of course, was the main event, and that was Roman Reigns, the Universal Champion, versus Brock Lesnar, with Paul Heyman in his corner, with Brock Lesnar, the WWE Champion. This, of course, the third time that they met at WrestleMania, and for Roman Reigns, the third time really was a charm. Roman Reigns, your tribal chief, your head of the table, is now your new WWE champion. He is the undisputed champion. This match sucked. Okay? This match was everything that people feared WrestleMania 31 would be. Remember when WrestleMania people, they were hyping up Roman Reigns to defeat Brock Lesnar? Roman Reigns won the Royal Rumble in 2015, and he was booed out of the building in Philly. Even The Rock couldn't save him when The Rock came back. Well, and then it ended up being a good match. And even though he didn't win, despite his ex-Shield partner Seth Rollins winning, cashing in his Money in the Bank, It was like, okay, it was a good match. It was it exceeded our expectations. Well, this did not exceed our expectations. This was exactly what we thought it would be. This is a typical Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match that we've been seeing for the longest. And this flat. Even with Roman Reigns, the heel momentum, it was just spears, 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 and it it went nowhere. Okay, so Roman Reigns blows out his shoulder. Now I don't know if this Roman Reigns blowing out his shoulder thing was a work or not, kind of like the Rick Boots thing from night one, but I think it wasn't a work because as he was holding up the two championships, he struggled to hold up the one championship. And then he beats him clean. He actually just beat him like 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring, clean. And you saw the shock on people's faces. And I said after it that it kind of reminded me of WrestleMania 30. Somebody said, "No, you mean WrestleMania 31 when they first fought?" No, I mean WrestleMania 30. If you guys remember when Brock Lesnar beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30, everybody, from watching WrestleMania for years and years, they were like, of course, Undertaker's going to win. He's overcome the odds a lot. He's defeated, guys like Shawn Michaels or Triple H twice, Shawn Michaels twice, Triple H twice, people that we thought for sure if anybody's going to end the streak, it's going to be these guys, even CM Punk 2013. But then when Brock beats him at 30, it's like it's just a shock on people's faces. So people were like that with this. I saw a kid like this in the audience because just like WrestleMania 30, because we thought, okay, Heyman's in his corner. Heyman is going to cost Brock somehow. He's going to fuck Brock just like he did at the Royal Rumble, right? When he cost him the match against Bobby Lashley. No. Heyman does nothing. And even Heyman's shocked when Roman beat him clean. Heyman came in even shocked. So it kind of replicates that shock and awe feeling you felt that Brock just got decimated. Brock Lesnar, who's been this beast, this dominant beast ever since 2014, right? He ran roughshod over John Cena. He ran roughshod over, everybody he faced. The Undertaker, twice. Once at Hell in a Cell 2015. Yeah, he helped from Bray Wyatt a little bit. And also at SummerSlam 2015. He's been a dominant beast, not ever since Willie came back, but ever since he defeated The Undertaker's streak. And now he's put down. Now, really, yes, Brock has lost at WrestleManias before. WrestleMania 35 when he lost to the Beast Slayer, Seth Rollins, right? Not that he lost. It wasn't that he lost. It was that he lost so decisively and clean in the middle of the ring, and he's holding his ribs, and he was really selling it. But as far as the in-ring action, it fell flat. Roman and Brock did not deliver for the main event. But one match that did deliver, and I think night 2 kind of suffered the same way that night 1 did. In the same way that Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair suffered in night 1 because Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch was so good, or Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins was so good. This suffered in the same way, similar. The match I'm about to talk about right now, Edge versus AJ Styles, suffered a lot. In the promos leading up to it, Edge was really pegging at AJ Styles because AJ Styles and Omos, I've been pronouncing his name wrong for the longest now, since like last year, or since 2020 when he first appeared. Omos, I've been pronouncing it Omos, like Edward James Omos. Go check the American Me review out in the archives. But anyway, I've been pronouncing it almost, but it's Omos. When they were tag team champions together, AJ Styles seemed like his bitch, right? So Edge just pegs at him in that way. And it was really leading up to a great match, dream match. basically. When AJ Styles came to the WWE in 2016, Edge was still retired. But when Edge came back, that was the match we all wanted to see. So Edge's entrance, right? He comes out on this throne and surrounded by fire, and it's so reminiscent of Edge when he first was in the Brood in the late '90s. And people love the Brood faction. People love Christian. People love Gangrel. That kind of tapped into the industrial music trend or the gothic trends of the late '90s. So people were like, okay, what's going to be this? And it was a cool entrance and it was a great match, a lot of back and forth action. But when AJ Styles goes for a springboard, who's standing there but Damian Priest? Damian Priest distracts AJ Styles, allowing Edge to get the win. And then Damian Priest and Edge on one foot to each other, each smiling to one another. So what does this mean? What does this mean for going forward? Is Edge going to reform a new brood? Is he going to make a new cult-like faction centered around him? Because remember, the original was centered around Gangrel. It wasn't really centered around Edge. Edge was like Gangrel's second. This new one with Damian Priest, kind of gothic stuff, like a friend of mine on Facebook said, a dark faction for a darker time. We're living in a very dark time right now. People say that World War III is looming. I don't think so, but people say that. And it's a dark faction for a dark time. So we got to see where this faction, this new faction of Edge, giving new life to Edge, getting rid of really the ultimate opportunist or the rated R superstar image that he cultivated in the 2000s and going back to the original, going back to basics with him and Damian Priest. We got to see who else he adds to this faction and what kind of, you know, animosity this faction cultivates with other superstars. This will be the first time really Edge had a faction. Yes, he had um, Hawkins and Ryder, the Edge heads back in the day, and La Familia with Chavo and Vicky Guerrero. This was like 2008, 9ish, but that was not his style. This is more his speed. This is going back to the original, going back to the Brood. Because when he came out last year, um, for the triple threat match, people were like, oh, it almost sounded like he was, going to bring back the Brood, and people have wanted him to bring back a newer version of the Brood. It's sort of like how they always want, Nation of Domination to come back, or the NWO to come back, or people remember those factions from when they were kids in the '90s. As I said in other videos, '90s factions were huge. So we got to see what um, the future brings for Edge. But it was an amazing match with AJ Styles and somebody that didn't have an amazing match. I'm not going in sequential order with these matches. I'm just going I'm based on how much I enjoyed each one of them and what I remember from each one of them. A match that didn't go over, and this is a person I liked. This is a person that when he was WWE champion, I thought it was awesome. I liked the Hurt Business as faction, and that's Bobby Lashley. I felt like Bobby Lashley's second run with the WWE Championship was derailed because of his injury at Elimination Chamber, and they probably wanted to put the belt on Brock anyway, right? Because so they could have the unification match. That's understandable. But he comes back and now he's a baby face. I don't really like Bobby Lashley as a baby face. It gives me flashbacks to when he was a baby face in '06, '07. When he was an ECW brand fighting against Vince McMahon. Where Trump was in his corner, battle of billionaires. I don't really like that version of Bobby Lashley. I think he works well as a heel with MVP as his manager. And he's facing up against Omos. Get it right, Jay. Omos. He's facing against Omos. And This match sucked, and this was an awful match. This was your typical kind of medium-sized man versus your huge big man, like Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez shit. Or yeah, it was Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez. Bobby Lashley again doesn't work as a babyface. I like him as a heel. Him being a heel gave him an edge. Being a babyface, fuck that. Have him turn heel. And this almost guy sucks. I don't know what WWE sees in him. I guess he's big, and this was a downgrade for Bobby Lashley. It was just like Drew McIntyre on night one. Drew McIntyre, Scottish Superman, he was built up to be this huge star. He went to the Indies and he became a huge star. And then he came back and got over and won the 2020 Royal Rumble, beat Brock at WrestleMania 36, was basically holding it down for the men's division in the COVID era. Matches against The Fiend, matches against uh, you know, no, not against The Fiend, against Randy Orton, holding it down basically for the COVID era, the champion throughout most of the COVID era. And then, he has a good match with Bobby Lashley on WrestleMania 37. But how the mighty have fallen, now he's facing off against night one he faced Baron Corbin as Happy Corbin with freaking Madcap Moss in his corner. So those guys, Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, were main eventers in 2020 and 2021 respectively. And now Brock and Roman are back on the scene, and they mean nothing. They're completely put in the back seat. Oh, we don't need them anymore. We got Brock and Roman back. We don't need them anymore. you know, Basically, yeah, we don't need them anymore. We got Brock and Roman. So Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre. I might not like Drew McIntyre, and it was kind of anticlimactic when he won the 2020 Royal Rumble because I wanted Edge to win. I felt Edge's return was epic, and Edge should have won. He won a year later, but he should have won that year. So now, just like last year, we find ourselves in the same kind of predicament at the end of WrestleMania, going into the next biggest event, WrestleMania Backlash. But to me, the next biggest event will be SummerSlam. Going into SummerSlam 2022, the second of the big two, what will happen? Who will be able to stop Roman Reigns? Who will be able to stop? It wasn't John Cena. They brought John Cena back. He mowed over Cena. It wasn't Brock Lesnar. They brought Brock Lesnar back and turned him babyface, and he mauled over him. He's mauled over basically everybody that WWE has thrown at him since coming back at SummerSlam 2020 in the in a triple threat match. And since turning heel and aligning himself with Heyman, he's mauled over everybody. Brock, Cena, everybody. Edge, Daniel Bryan, everybody who's ever beaten the odds. He stacked up Daniel Bryan and Edge. Hell, you could kind of say he ran Daniel Bryan out of the out of the company. You know, you know what I mean? So he ran freaking Braun Strowman out of the company. He ran Bray Wyatt the Fiend out of the company. So who's next for him to conquer? Not Goldberg, because he defeated Goldberg already. He embarrassed Goldberg in Saudi Arabia. So Goldberg isn't the guy. Brock Lesnar isn't the guy. John Cena isn't the guy. So Roman appears unstoppable. But what about Cody Rhodes? Build Cody Rhodes, build the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes up to such a point where he's gonna face he's gonna face Roman Reigns at um uh WrestleMania 39. If you're not gonna bring The Rock back, obviously Big Dog, I agree with Big Dog that the ideal main event going into WrestleMania 39 in Los Angeles would be uh would be The Rock versus Roman Reigns. Because The Rock is the biggest star that ever been in Hollywood. That a wrestler turned actor. So he is the ideal choice. But if not him, why not Cody? Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 39 could be. We got to just wait and see. Maybe they build him up at SummerSlam, and hopefully he doesn't maul over Cody Rhodes, and that'd be the end of Cody Rhodes' push. They build Cody up until SummerSlam, and SummerSlam 2020, SummerSlam 2022. He mauls over Cody Rhodes, and that's the end of him. Hopefully that's not it. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But it was a good night for the Bloodline, a good couple of nights for the Bloodline. The Usos retained, and Roman Reigns got the double crown. But overall, night two wasn't as good as night one. It had some unexpected laughs. But besides Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin being the MVPs, the co-MVPs, of course, in wrestling, you're only as good as your dance partner, and that is true for both those guys as dance partners, in Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn have been staples of the WWE ever since coming to NXT in the mid 2010s, and I remember the night they fought. Um, in NXT in 2014. That was the same night that Charlotte and Natalya had their match when Ric Flair was in Charlotte's corner and Bret was in Natalia's corner. And I said it in a Facebook that night. I said, this is going to be we've just seen the future of the WWE, not only in the women's division, but in these two guys, who was formerly El Generico and Kevin Steen. They have now transitioned to the mainstream, out of indie wrestling, out of ROH, into the mainstream, and they are going to be huge, despite what Jim Cornette said about them when they were in ROH. But they never really got to that level. Over the years, they've wrestled each other, and they've wrestled, as tag teams and other matches at WrestleMania, but it's always kind of been in the mid card. They've always kind of been the workhorses. But this WrestleMania showed why they could be big stars at putting other guys over. Here, both these guys put over men who are way past their prime and made them look good and made us talk about these two matches over these two nights. So big ups to Kevin Owens / Kevin Steen and Sami Zayn / El Generico. They finally made it. They finally arrived. They are the stars. They are the MVPs, or one of the MVPs of WrestleMania 38. The others, of course, besides Vince and Stone Cold, is Cody Rhodes. He is what people are talking about. His future, what he's going to do as he goes forward in his new journey as his new self in the WWE. So that's my takeaway for the whole WrestleMania weekend. Overall, it was a great WrestleMania weekend. Again, thank you to The Undertaker for all his years of entertainment. He came out twice. He came out again the second night of WrestleMania, but he deserves it. He's the best, character again that WWE has ever created. They tried it again with the Fiend. It didn't really work out with the Fiend, but congratulations to him. And also, even congratulations to Madcap Moss, the winner of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I don't think, I don't think that they're going to do anything with Madcap Moss. They've never done anything else with people that won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal ever since Cesaro won it back in 2014. So I don't think they'll do anything here with it. But that is my takeaway. The MVPs of this: Stone Cold Steve Austin, Vince McMahon, Cody Rhodes, uh, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens. They're the MVPs of this show. All those guys. Those are the guys that down in the future, when we remember WrestleMania 38 and the two nights collectively, that's what we'll remember. It's like that with every show. You know, WrestleMania 1, you only really remember that it was the first WrestleMania and you remember the main event. WrestleMania 2, yeah, Hogan and Bundy in a cage. But what you really remember is the Andre the Giant, the Andre the Giant winning the WWF versus the NFL Battle Royal with the Chicago Bears, William Refrigerator Perry, and the fact that it was three locations. WrestleMania 3, you remember the main event, and you remember Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat. WrestleMania 4, you don't really remember anything in terms of the matches, but you remember that Macho Man won his first WWE championship, and that Bret Hart uh, turned babyface on Bad News Brown. WrestleMania 5, of course, the Mega Powers exploding. A lot of people also do remember Strikeforce breaking up and Demolition winning the tag team championships. And I do anyway, even though I was a fan of him, Rick Rude defeating the Ultimate Warrior. WrestleMania 6, remember the main event. WrestleMania 7, remember Macho Man versus the Ultimate Warrior. WrestleMania 8, remember Macho Man versus Ric Flair. WrestleMania 9, you don't really remember any, much of anything except for the Steiner Brothers versus the Head Shrinkers. Kind of like WrestleMania 2, where you remember the Dream Team versus the British Bulldogs, but you don't really remember much of anything else. Well, WrestleMania 10, all you really remember from that, people remember Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels ladder match and Owen Hart versus Bret Hart. The main event, Bret Hart versus Yokozuna, wasn't that great. Same with WrestleMania 11. People don't really remember much of anything from WrestleMania 11 except that Pamela Anderson looked great and the main event was decent and acceptable. And hell, even in how bad the I Quit match between Bob Backlund and Bret Hart really was, and how bad the audio was. I mean, and Jonathan Taylor Thomas playing chess. The audio was so bad that nobody could hear. That Nick Totoro couldn't even hear Jerry the King Lawler and Vince McMahon, talking on the headset. Um, what do you remember from WrestleMania 12? Of course, Diesel versus Undertaker, and you remember the Iron Man match, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. WrestleMania 13. Yeah, people say it was horrible. The Rock versus the Sultan. Rock's first WrestleMania with his dad in his corner and the Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund in the Sultan's corner. But you don't really remember much of anything except for Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart in the submission match with Ken Shamrock as the referee. 14, you remember a lot more, like Ken Shamrock versus The Rock, like Mike Tyson punching out Shawn Michaels, or like Stone Cold Steve Austin winning his first championship. 15, yeah, it was the Big Show's debut. He had a match with Mick Foley. He punched out Vince McMahon, which was reminiscent of WrestleMania 6 when Andre the Giant finally turned babyface again and slapped around Bobby Heenan. I'm the fucking boss at WrestleMania 6 after the Colossal Connections lost to Demolition. WrestleMania WrestleMania 16, you don't remember much except for Dudley's, Hardy's, and Edge and Christian. In 17, you remember everything. 18, Hogan and Rock. 19, Brock Lesnar was busting his ass. And the fact that it was Stone Cold Steve Austin's last match, and the fact that Booker T didn't win the World Heavyweight Championship. 20, of course, what you remember from 20 in terms of the triple threat match, they don't want you to remember because who won it? Chris Benoit. 21, Batista and Triple H bleeding buckets, and Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero having their first match in the WWE. That was a classic that they would go on to feud for the whole year. WrestleMania 22, the Street Fight versus Shawn Michaels versus Vince McMahon, and that's pretty much it. You know what I mean? Like, what else from WrestleMania? Well, okay, yeah, you could say RVD winning the Money in the Bank. Okay, you remember that, or like 21, the first Money in the Bank when Edge won it. Okay, but what happened after when RVD did finally beat John Cena, he dropped the ball anyway, and they had to take not only the ECW championship away from him, but the WWE championship as well because of drug issues. Okay, 2007 Battle of the Billionaires. You remember that? You remember kind of Shawn Michaels and John Cena, but their match later on in that year in London was way better, so it outshone that. And you remember Undertaker versus Batista. What was advertised at WrestleMania 24, you don't really remember much because Mayweather versus Big Show wasn't that great. You know, they wanted to capitalize on Mayweather's cachet with the match he had with the fight he had with De La Hoya, you know, the year before, but it wasn't that great. It was like kind of like LT versus Bam Bam. It's like, okay, yeah, I know Big Show's coming back, but why choose Big Show when you got these main eventers here? What you remember from the show in 24 was Ric Flair's retirement and Edge versus Undertaker for the World Heavyweight Championship. Same thing with 25. Yeah, you had Randy Orton versus Triple H, a great build-up, but what do you remember? You remember Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Same thing with 26. Okay, it was a build-up a lot all these years. The Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart is finally coming back to avenge his loss at Survivor Series 1997 with the hands of Vince McMahon. He's going to fuck up Vince, and he, you know, and he's going to get his revenge, and he's coming back after all these years. But what do you remember? Shawn Michaels, his last match, and Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker too. You don't even really remember that Edge came back from an injury for Chris Jericho, or that Batista and John Cena, the two biggest babyfaces at that time, had their biggest match, and it would be Batista's last match for another 4 years, kind of like when Rock retired for the first time unceremoniously. Rock and Stock Connection versus Evolution handicap match, WrestleMania 20. Do you really remember that? No, because it was overshadowed by other things. Same thing with 27. People don't even really remember the main event at 27. All they remember is the first WrestleMania in Atlanta, and The Rock came back for the first time ever since 2004. WrestleMania 28, again, The Rock's in-ring return, the biggest, uh, the biggest buy rate in the history of professional wrestling ever. A lot of non-wrestling fans that had dropped off after the Attitude Era ended came back in 2012 to watch this once in a lifetime thing that turned out to be twice in a lifetime. Same thing with WrestleMania 29. You don't really remember much from WrestleMania 29 except for, or at least me, Undertaker versus CM Punk. WrestleMania 30, same thing. There was a lot of stuff around WrestleMania 30 that you really remember that was a historic benchmark. The WWE Network's first pay-per-view ever. Undertaker's streak ending, of course, and Daniel Bryan finally overcoming the odds and defeating not only Triple H, but Batista and Randy Orton in one night. Basically, all of Evolution and the Yes Movement and the Ultimate Warrior getting into the Hall of Fame and then passing away, 2 nights later. WrestleMania 31, you don't really remember much except for the capacity, and you thought that Brock Lesnar was for sure to lose against Roman Reigns, but he doesn't, and Seth Rollins cashes his money in the bank, and Sting losing. Finally coming to WWE after all these years, only to lose, and the confrontation between DX and the NWO. WrestleMania 32, you don't remember much. I don't anyway, except for Shane McMahon's return, Hell in a Cell match against The Undertaker, reigniting the brand split, and Roman Reigns getting booed out of the building when he finally defeats Triple H for the WWE Championship. WrestleMania 33. What do you remember? Goldberg's final return for a rematch with Brock Lesnar. The Hardy Boys coming back, and Roman Reigns defeating The Undertaker. And what does The Undertaker do? He does the same thing Triple H did to open up the show this night 2 of WrestleMania 38. Triple H laid his boots in the ring. Same thing The Undertaker did at the end of WrestleMania 33. And one thing I remember from WrestleMania 33 is that it was so freaking long. WrestleMania 34, what do you remember? What do I remember? Kurt Angle's return to the WWE Ronda Rousey's debut, and the second Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Oh, and Nicholas and Braun Strowman winning the tag team championships against Sheamus and Cesaro. WrestleMania 35. What do I remember? Kofi Kingston, Kofi Mania, Kofi finally overcoming the odds. In a role reversal, Daniel Bryan was the dark horse. Daniel Bryan was the underdog, and now he's the one calling Kofi Kingston a B plus player, and he's the one saying that Kofi Kingston can do it and finally make history and become the first undisputed black champion. And the first female main event in WrestleMania history, with Becky Lynch becoming Becky Two Belts, defeating Charlotte Flair, who was a shoo-in, and Ronda Rousey. What do I remember from WrestleMania 36? It being COVID and them having to go to the cinematic route, and The Undertaker coming back out of retirement to face AJ Styles in a Boneyard match, and the Firefly Funhouse match with The Fiend and John Cena. What do I remember from 37? Bobby Lashley being the first black guy to go into WrestleMania as the champion and come out of WrestleMania as the champion, defeating Drew McIntyre. And also Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks, the first two black women ever main event of WrestleMania, and the return of crowd to a live WrestleMania. So it's the same thing with WrestleMania 38. What do I remember? Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Vince McMahon return, Stone Cold Steve Austin's return. It was basically a WrestleMania for return. So we got to see what I can remember WrestleMania 39 next year. Love you guys. Peace.